Every major Canadian city has an evacuation plan. None of them have an everyone arrives at once plan. When total warfare hits, 36 million people default to the same instinct. They run toward what they know: Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal. And they die in the gridlock. The highways lock, the bridges choke, the overpasses become parking lots. The places that actually survive aren't on anyone's evacuation list. They're chosen by geography, infrastructure, and cold military logic. This video breaks down 10 fortress cities, ranked by defensive terrain, resource independence, and strategic value, that would still be standing when everything else burns. Most people have never heard of half of them. That's exactly the point. Number 10. Prince George, British Columbia. The northern crossroads, Highway 97 and Highway 16, intersect here. That's it. That's the entire arterial network feeding northern BC. Every piece of lumber, every ton of grain, every liter of fuel moving into the resource-rich interior passes through this junction. You don't need to hold 1,000 kilometers of territory. You hold the crossroads and the territory holds itself. Prince George sits surrounded by forestry and agricultural land, offering genuine caloric self-sufficiency. Now contrast that with Vancouver. It looks safe. Port access, international trade. But Vancouver is a coastal target with a population entirely dependent on imported food moving through 3 highway choke points. One severed route and 4 million people start starving within a week. Whoever controls the crossroads controls the north. Number 9. Val-d'Or, Quebec. The Gold Vault. This town sits on top of one of the richest mineral belts in the Western Hemisphere. Most people can't find it on a map. That's a feature, not a flaw. History proves this repeatedly. When the Roman Empire collapsed, power consolidated around mines. During the Yugoslav wars in the 1990s, precious metal extraction points became shadow capitals overnight. When fiat currency dies, the economy doesn't disappear. It relocates. Val-d'Or's position in the Abitibi-Témiscamingue region, tucked behind the Canadian Shield, makes it a logistical nightmare for any advancing force. The terrain is dense boreal forest. No clean sightlines, no easy armor corridors. When paper money dies, the map redraws itself around ore. Number 8. Churchill, Manitoba, the Arctic gatekeeper. Population under 1,000. Most people hear that and dismiss it instantly. Military planners hear it and see zero collateral complexity. Churchill holds the only deep-water Arctic port in the country. During both World Wars, Atlantic convoys were getting shredded by submarine warfare. Arctic shipping lanes became the critical alternative. That strategic value hasn't changed. It's actually increased as northern sea routes open further each decade. The extreme remoteness, accessible only by rail or air, makes conventional targeting wildly inefficient. You don't waste a cruise missile on a town of 900. But you absolutely fight over the port that controls Hudson Bay, access to the Arctic Ocean. The smallest dot on the map controls the largest ocean. Number 7. Petawawa, Ontario. The self-contained garrison. ACFB Petawawa is the largest army base in the country by both personnel and land area. Hundreds of square kilometers of restricted ground create a natural buffer zone that no civilian evacuation horde can breach. The Ottawa River supplies unlimited fresh water. The base operates as a self-sustaining military township with its own infrastructure, its own logistics chain, its own power. Ottawa sits 80 kilometers southeast. It would collapse under refugee pressure within days. Petawawa was built to be besieged. That's the difference most people miss. A city needs a base. A base doesn't need a city. Number 6. Halifax, Nova Scotia. The Atlantic Survivor. CFB Halifax houses the entire Atlantic Fleet. That alone makes it strategically essential. But the deeper advantage is institutional memory. In 1917, the Halifax explosion, the largest man-made detonation before Hiroshima, killed roughly 2,000 people and leveled the city's north end. Over a century of rebuilding embedded disaster response architecture into every layer of civic planning. Emergency coordination protocols, blast-resistant infrastructure design, distributed supply chains. All of it baked in through generational trauma. Most cities plan for disasters they've imagined. Halifax plans for disasters it survived. A city that already lived through a blast radius thinks differently about the next one. Number 5. Winnipeg, Manitoba. The rail fortress, geographic center of the country. Every major rail line converges here. CN, CP, everything. CFB 17. Wing runs northern operations from this position. But here's what most people miss entirely. Even the grain storage infrastructure along the Winnipeg rail corridor holds enough volume to feed a regional population for months. Not days, months. Most cities measure food supply in 72-hour windows. Winnipeg measures it in train cars. In a prolonged conflict, whoever controls the rail network controls the food distribution for the entire interior. Control the rail, feed the region, own the center. Now pay attention. Number 4, changes the math on everything you think you know. Number 4, Sudbury, Ontario. This is the one that breaks the pattern. Sudbury reads as a declining mining town. Nickel production. Shuttered smelters, population bleeding out, that's the surface read. The strategic read is completely different. Sudbury's deep nickel mines, some exceeding 2.4 kilometers below the surface, represent the largest existing network of hardened underground shelter in the country. No purpose-built bunker comes close. Think about that depth. 2.4 kilometers of solid Canadian shield granite overhead. The most hardened government bunker in existence uses maybe 3 to 5 meters of reinforced concrete. Sudbury's mines offer 2,400 meters of rock. The ratio isn't even comparable. A single deep mine complex can shelter thousands of people at depths where surface detonation is thermodynamically irrelevant. The blast wave doesn't reach, the radiation doesn't penetrate, the thermal pulse doesn't register. And the smelting infrastructure means domestic production of war-critical nickel continues when every global import route collapses. The town most people use as a punchline is the most survivable position in the country by raw physics. The deepest hole in the country is the safest place in it. Number 3. Saguenay, Quebec. The fjord fortress. Tucked behind the Laurentian Shield, accessible only through a single major fjord approach. Military planners call this terrain denial. Any advancing force, land or naval, funnels through narrow choke points where a handful of defenders can neutralize a vastly superior force. The Rio Tinto aluminum smelter here runs on independent hydroelectric power. Not grid-connected national power. Independent hydro. That means industrial output continues even if the entire national grid collapses. Aluminum production for military hardware doesn't stop. Contrast that with Montreal. More people, more industry. But Montreal sits on a flat river plain with approaches from every direction. No terrain denial, no natural choke points, no independent power generation. Geography doesn't negotiate. Number 2. Edmonton, Alberta. The energy citadel. Most northerly major city in the country, sitting far from coastal threats and border vulnerabilities. Edmonton serves as the logistics gateway to every northern resource extraction operation in the western half of the country. But the critical asset is refinery capacity. Massive petrochemical infrastructure makes Edmonton the essential fuel hub in any prolonged conflict. Diesel, aviation fuel, heating fuel for -40 Celsius winters. It all flows from here. Calgary sits closer to the border and closer to pipeline choke points. Edmonton sits behind it, insulated by distance and geography. In a sustained conflict, every military operation, every supply convoy, every heating system in the northern half of the country depends on Edmonton's refineries staying online. Wars are won by whoever keeps the fuel moving. Number 1. North Bay, Ontario. The Mountain Command. Home to NORAD's underground complex at CFB North Bay. The only hardened military command center in the country, buried inside solid granite. Purpose-built during the Cold War to survive a direct nuclear strike. This isn't speculative fortress ranking. This is literal fortress infrastructure. Blast doors, independent air filtration, autonomous power systems, hardened communications arrays that continue functioning when every surface antenna is dust. Every other position on this list is a fortress by geographic advantage or industrial coincidence. North Bay is a fortress by engineering and intent. There's one place in this country built to survive the end. Now you know where it is. Here's the pattern most people won't see. Not a single city on this list ranks in the top 10 by population. Not one. The places 36 million people would instinctively flee toward, Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, are the places that fall first. They fall because they're obvious. They fall because they're dependent. They fall because mass psychology is predictable, and predictability is a death sentence in total warfare. The 10 positions on this list survive because they're chosen by terrain, tonnage, and distance. Not sentiment, not familiarity, not comfort. Read the terrain. That's the only principle that matters. Read the terrain before you read the headlines. Read the terrain before you read the evacuation order. Read the terrain before 36 million other people make the same mistake at the same time on the same highway. Drop your province in the comments. I'll tell you which fortress city is your closest fallback position.